Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining the Behind Company Lines podcast. Today we have Ben Borodach, co-founder and CEO at April, where the company's vision is to democratize access to the tax code, enabling any company to develop and incorporate tax features and filing into their application. Ben, I'm so excited to chat with you. And as we were discussing before the show, there's obviously a lot of unrest with financial institutions and right up to tax season. Of course, it comes up for the regular individual. And so I'm really just fascinated not only about the different changes and way technology is kind of helping people stay up to date on the changes. And I think more and more, as I'm not sure if you're a TikTok connoisseur like myself, people are getting their financial advice and even tax advice from the platform and learning new ways that they can either use or move their assets in ways that they don't have to, say, pay extra taxes that are unnecessary. So more so interested in your insights on how the whole experience is and how it's been working with companies and individuals and kind of keeping all the information, like you said, democratized to everyone. But before we get into all that, what were you doing before you started the company?
Hey, Julian, thanks for having me here today. Yeah, obviously we're living in uncertain times and folks are both, I think, curious and cautious about what they do with their money and where they get their financial advice. I've spent my entire career working in financial services and early stage FinTech infrastructure. I started my career at Deloitte Consulting, where I was advising the largest U.S. banks and insurance companies like Citigroup and American Express and AIG on their future businesses, their digital transformation and their M&A and venture strategies. And then about 6 years ago, joined a company called Teammate, which is a U.S.-Israel hybrid venture creation company. We were primarily building companies in the cybersecurity space, and I led their expansion into the U.S. and built a number of FinTech and cybersecurity companies that we sold to firms like Deloitte and Moody's and PayPal and others, and then started April about 2 years back.
That's incredible that in terms of the experience and amount of wealth and knowledge that you have in terms of scaling companies. And I'm curious in your perspective, what you've seen, I'm sure, whether it's a different type of product or similar products and services that companies may have kind of a prescriptive way that they can scale or grow once they've hit certain, say, milestones or certain key features that the company has. And I'm curious to hear, what are those features that companies that are ready for growth, that are ready to scale, what do they have? Is it something operationally? Is something with leadership? It's something about the product and the market, how that fits? What, in your opinion, do companies have that are, say, ready for that scaling challenge, not 0 to 1 or 1 to 10, but beyond that and what they need to be successful? What have you seen?
Yeah, I think in the industry, we talk a lot about product market fit. I think that definition probably has gotten sort of threaded a little bit in recent times, but essentially it means that you have a product that you can define what it is, and you've got a group of people and you can define who they are, and you understand what problem set that you're addressing for them, and basically understand sort of what is the value proposition. And you've got a product that's built that is servicing this need. And there's different ways to measure that, right? We measure that through retention and LTV, and we look at that differently. I think what got added to the mix in the last year, which I thought was sort of, in some ways, a little bit comical, is we added unit economics. And we need unit economics. And I think unit economics are really important for a business, not just a product, to be able to scale. And I think that that's sort of the grounding or the reality, which is that we're not just building products, we're also building businesses.
Yeah.
And so while founders don't necessarily need to have positive unit economics in day one, they need to understand that what they are selling on a fundamental level, at some level of scale, they can sell for more than it costs to create. And I think that's the fundamental definition of any business. And so I think that that's sort of an ingredient that possibly got in the up times a little bit. And it's something that April we're very focused on. And I think before you go and scale your business, it's critical that you understand that you're able to sell your product, maybe not necessarily today, but there's a clear pathway where you can sell your good or service for more than it costs to create.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you talk about just the simplicity of selling your product at more than it costs to create. And how has that model kind of changed? And what was there any catalyst that caused the focus of unit economics? I mean, there's all these companies, say Amazon, for instance, is a company that runs at a negative, right? They typically tend to run in the negative cycles and not be on paper in the positive, but so many reasons why that occurs. But I guess on a smaller level for other companies, what was the catalyst? Was it a change in venture funding? Was it a change in the overall macroeconomic environment for companies to focus on this in particular? Was there anything that you thought of as a change or anything that you can speculate?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a couple of things. I think, first of all, we saw a number of businesses from the last decade play out.
Yeah.
And it turned out that maybe they never could achieve positive unit economics, meaning that they never could sell their good for more than it cost to create. And then I would argue what you have is not a business. You have something else. And I think we saw that in a number of high-flying pre-IPO, post-IPO companies that didn't really work out. And so I think that was probably going to happen anyway. And I think we just saw the acceleration of that mentality from the market because the public market was willing to value companies based on top line revenues. And what we saw was really a return to a focus on earnings. Right? Ultimately, as an investor, I have the option to buy what we call the risk-free rate, right? Which is I can go buy US treasuries. I can get a return of a few percentage points. And so if I'm investing in a business, I want to know that that business will have earnings in some future state that they can pay to a dividend to shareholders. And I think what we saw is that companies that had no line of sight to being able to pay a dividend if they wanted to, Amazon maybe elects not to, but I think we could agree that if Amazon wanted to turn a profit and wanted to maybe grow their business slower, they probably could.
Right.
And so I think that's sort of the delineation that happened in the market over the last 12 months.
Yeah. Well said. And what in particular was the catalyst to start April? What did you see that was a need for a lot of companies? And obviously, I think most people are, I don't want to say tax illiterate, but we all have, there's a lot of time that's spent into understanding a lot of the updates that get made consecutively, right? And even not as individual, say, taxpayers, but for businesses in particular, there's a bunch of grants and write-offs and all these things that can be super beneficial to companies. But I mean, it's hard to know what to do. So what was the catalyst for April and what gets you excited about kind of the mission that that's driving the company?
Yeah, look, we're aiming to embed tax solutions wherever people make financial decisions. And I think that that's at the heart of understanding. And I think you've hit it spot on, Julian. So for example, the tax code has grown by 10x over the last couple of decades. We went from 400,000 words to like 4 million words. And what we've done is we have, and that's just the federal tax code. And we have a great big country of 330 million Americans. And we've actually built the tax code that's very malleable. And so we address lots of specific situations. We have specific credits and deductions for families and for businesses and for it. It's basically, it's not really just about revenue collection in the way that we typically think about taxes. The American federal tax system, and we can also talk about states, is essentially our socioeconomic contract. It's how we drive incentives. It's how we give people money that need it. I mean, we do many things through our tax system. It's much broader than just tax. And I think the core driver behind this is to allow that access for everyone. Right now, there may be laws for everyone, but only a small subset of individuals and companies that have the means and the resources can afford to have access to the laws in a way that they can use them to get ahead. And so our mission at April is really to make the law more available and more accessible. And the way we do that is by bringing these applications into day-to-day services that consumers are used to interacting with, like their payroll or their bank or their investment account. And by doing it in a way that's simple and elegant. I think we can just think of like one really basic example, which is sort of the opportunity hiding in plain sight. We're in tax season right now, and we're all trying to figure out what we owe.
Yeah.
And the reality is that most of the things that we could have done as Americans to influence our financial position through taxes happened last year.
Yeah.
It's already too late. And so we're basically engaged in this compliance data collection, data aggregation activity when the time we should be spending is during the year so that we can get more credits and deductions or understand decisions that we can make that will allow us to have better outcomes. And so by embedding it within applications that people are using, we can also allow them to estimate what taxes they'll owe, to optimize their taxes so they can minimize their bill or take advantage of credits and deductions that are available to them, and ultimately file faster with less costs and less friction.
Yeah. What in particular, I don't know if you have a number, what is the number for the percentage of or amount of money that companies are leaving on the table to not either be, whether they're paying too much taxes or they're not taking advantage of ways to get money back?
I think it's a great question. I think it really depends on the segment where you are in the market. So we released the State of the American Taxpayer Report. We can send it to you afterwards and it's available on our website. We surveyed 5,000 Americans and it really depends. And I think that's sort of at the crux of what we're saying is right now, we have very few solutions. We have TurboTax and a couple of others, and it's one solution for everybody. we have thousands of banks. Why is there only one way to file your taxes? And so there are people that need their refunds. So we have $300 billion remitted through tax refunds, according to the IRS every year. But there's probably a smaller subset of Americans that are really getting those refund dollars that need that money to fund their day-to-day life or to pay for their child's kitchen. And we call those sort of the refund rate. There's a different set of Americans that are maybe more of those financially minded types that want to be really on top of their finances. And they just have anxiety over the fact that tax is probably the largest or second largest line item on their home P&L.
Yeah.
And they don't know what it is all year. And so they're trying to make decisions. Should I go on a vacation or what should I do? And they feel like they don't have the information available to them. And so I think that's part of the way that we see the world also is we're a big country with different needs, and we've got to bring more solutions to market so that we can better serve all taxpayers with solutions that meet their different needs.
Yeah, it's incredible to talk about just the amount, not only of people kind of leaving money on the table, but also what you mentioned before, the timing of all this, which is one thing that always kind of trips me up each year, is that all the financial, I guess, strategies that I should have deployed are already too late to deploy. And I'm curious, what are some of those strategies, just off the top of your head, that companies or businesses or individuals can start kind of looking into, or maybe it's an area where there's resources where we can find outside of April or inside of April? How can we be more informed throughout the year? And what are some ways that we can do that and implement that in our day-to-day lives?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think one of the challenges with this is that it varies so much. Obviously.
Sure.
So I'll give you a few examples, and I don't need to be sort of redundant on it. And we have a tax policy team whose sole job it is to track them. So there's a new vehicle tax credit that we know about. So like when folks are going to buy a car, they may not realize, and I think it can be pretty significant, like up to $7,500.
Yeah.
They may not realize that, hey, I'm going to buy a car, and actually this electric car is actually less expensive because of this tax credit that I could have gotten. Or you might have, for example, a mother who is maybe debating taking night classes and is not sure if she can afford childcare to be able to go take a course that might put her in a position to earn a higher wage for her family. And so by not knowing that there's a child independent care credit available that she can reap the benefits of, if she pays for qualified daycare for a child to go take this course, she may not know. And she might be looking at that and say, oh, this is several $1,000s, when if she knew about that credit, she knew she'd get some of that money back. And I think on the most basic level, you look at this group of Americans that are getting these larger, some of them, not all of them, but many of them are sort of overpaying the IRS in some ways. It's a collection agency, and it's naturally incentivized to make sure that as a collector, it's easier to get more money. But your job, your job as a citizen is to pay the IRS what you owe. You don't need to overpay them. And so these W-4 forms that sort of help employees understand how much they're supposed to be paying the government on out of every paycheck are very complicated. And so we've developed a solution where you can sort of decide where you want to be on the spectrum. Do you want to pay exactly? Do you want to overpay a little bit? And you can sort of take control over your situation and make sure that you're compliant, but also that you have those funds and you can use it to pay down debt. You can use it to invest, or you can use it in any way that you want. And so I think all of this is about understanding that tax affects everybody. Yeah. And it's about giving people the optionality to have control over their specific circumstance.
Yeah. Thinking about businesses and how it affects them and the way they kind of prioritize, whether it's going in a certain direction with their company or operationally, how they pay their employees or anything kind of along that nature. How can those individuals be better informed, and how are they being informed prior to that? Was it working with a tax accountant? And, it's hard to judge the tax accountants. Tax accountants are like barbers. If you choose the wrong one, you're going to be looking at it in the face for like too long. You have to start to reiterate the kind of frustration, but no, all jokes aside, how can people running companies be better informed, and how are they being informed prior to a company like April?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And I think there's great tax professionals in this country that are doing a fantastic job serving clients. Yeah. There are also structural challenges. We are producing fewer licensed tax professionals on a yearly basis. Older professionals are retiring or passing away. And so naturally, we don't have the labor force really to service this stuff. And these people have a hard job. They have a lot of paperwork that comes in, and they're still doing a lot of manual data entry, and it's not cost effective. And many of them want to be moving up market and want to be doing higher value things. Many of these people do not want to be entering data in a simple tax return. They want to be structuring complex entities. They want to be helping people get advice so that they can they can take advantage of our tax law to make better decisions. And so the way we see that is paired with just a general trend towards digitization and capabilities like machine learning and AI. We see a bigger opportunity for digital or digital assisted services in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And when you think about businesses in particular, small business is not just a bedrock of our country, but we also have, and we call these individuals the side gig dynamo.
Yeah.
Right, in our taxpayer report. But it's a growing population, and it's a growing population that's not well served, not just in taxes, but in financial services in general, because they're not a corporation. They don't have the means. This could be like your local barber. It could be an Uber driver. It could be someone that's freelancing on the side, producing content, and maybe has a couple of people working with them, but doesn't necessarily have the time and the resources to start spinning up a whole enterprise suite of financial accountants and advisors. And I think on the one hand, this group of individuals doesn't necessarily have financial products, bank accounts, investment accounts, tax products, accounting products that are really built for them. And then on the tax side, they also typically get charged a lot more money because they have more complexity, even though they might be earning the same amount of money or less than someone that might just have a simple job or a W-2. But on the other hand, there's all these opportunities available to them, and they can take deductions on their business expenses, and there are certain credits that are available to them. So if you're an Uber driver, you might be able to depreciate your car, but these things get fairly complicated.
Yeah.
And so then you find yourself not necessarily earning millions of dollars, but needing to pay fairly expensive advisors. And so what April does is we integrate with your other ecosystem of apps that you're using. So this could be like your accounting service, your bank account. We pull in that data for you. So if you're a small business owner that has a fairly sort of simplistic business footprint, you might have a sole prop or an LLC. We're actually able to pull in your information from your accounting suite, and we can pre-populate that form called the Schedule C already on your behalf. And so what it does is it eliminates work. You've already done the work to do your accounting because you're going to do that. And we can leverage the work that you've done and pull it into your personal tax return and save you the time.
Amazing. And what does, say, the influence of crypto and those type of asset classes that are becoming more and more popularized, and people are either paying or storing money and then using them as a savings account or investment account? How's the evolution of that whole sector becoming more and more impactful in, say, taxes and how we will be filing taxes in the future? Anything that you've seen or can predict for the future?
Yeah, I actually wrote an article on this on CoinDesk, and I'll share some insights on that in a minute. I think at its most basic level, crypto is just another good example of how the world is changing, but our tax law was written a long time ago, and our tax software was built a long time ago. And so it's just indicative of the fact that we need new solutions that are digital forward, that are mobile first, that are machine learning driven, that and can understand and live within an ecosystem. Right now, tax apps are on an island. And our finances are becoming inextricably intertwined. And I think crypto is a great example of something where you've got network layers and app layers and staking, and we're bringing lots of the whole idea is bringing different capabilities that were disjointed under one infrastructure. And that it's not dissimilar to what we're trying to do in tax. I think if you look at the crypto market in particular, crypto did some things that kind of broke typical reporting. Right. So in the early years, and I've spoken about this on some other podcasts, is in the early years, there was just not guidance, right? No one knew, is this capital gains? Is it currency? Is it regular income? I think the IRS actually, to their credit, has done like a pretty good job. People may not like it, so that you've got to pay taxes. I mean, I think you should pay taxes on it, but I think the IRS has come out. They have pretty good resources in defining if you're staking, treat it this way. If you're trading, if you've got a sort of an airdrop, do it that way. And so I think there is decent guidance out there. I think the challenge that crypto has is it's got a velocity of transactions happening across platforms that just doesn't exist really for most people. And so that kind of broke the sort of typical reporting mechanisms. And then you have solutions like TaxBit and Cointrack and ZenLedger and others that are helping people sort of, what I was doing is I had to reconcile it in Excel myself. And now you've got solutions that are helping you reconcile things like cost basis and so on. And from an April perspective, we don't want to be involved there. We just need your reconciled information.
Yeah.
but there are solutions that are kind of helping with the reconciliation, right? And so we take that reconciled view of how much income did you earn across accounts, or how much did you gain or lose against what you put in? And then we can take that and we can prepare your taxes. And that actually fundamentally doesn't look all that different than just reporting other stock and bond sales. The problem is really a reconciliation problem. It's sort of like a precursor to being able to file.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about April and how much traction you've had so far, and what's particularly excited for you in this next year, and the growth that you'll be seeing, and anything new that you really excites you about the movement and the I guess the velocity that April's moving at.
Yeah, it's exciting times. I think we kind of ended up attacking an opportunity that was hiding in plain sight. Really big market, impacts 100% virtually of the U.S. population. Tough pain points, and one that hasn't really seen change in a lot of years. We're fortunate now that we have over a dozen clients, thousands of users across different apps and ecosystems. And I think what we're finding is that there's a real appetite to try new solutions. People are open to trying new things. And the 2 or 3 main things that we talk about is taking tax from an island and embedding it into apps and ecosystems that you use. The other thing that we talk a lot about is the transitional period that we're in financial services. Our view on the world is that the last decade in financial services has been all about the shift to digital.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're saying that that's necessarily complete, but I think we've seen it play out. Most companies have reasonably good interfaces now. There's a lot of work now to better orchestrate, and that's where we see that opportunity of going from digital to intelligent. And when we think about sort of the financial apps of the future, we believe that it's going to all be about orchestration. I, as a user, can log into an app that feels and looks like it's built personally for me in my specific use case. I can get my investments, I can transfer money, and it seems to always be a step ahead.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what we're missing right now. We kind of have the different pieces, but they're kind of clunky and they don't really work together. And so we think that tax is a fundamental piece of this, first and foremost, because it's something we all have to do and it's a big pain point, but also because it's so interconnected to everything else that I do. Right. It relates to my entire user profile, and it's something that can help me get organized and help me drive at my financial outcomes. When we look at these opportunities as an end user, just as an anecdote, from a tax perspective, right now, existing solutions in the market are digital. Right. They took these hundreds of forms that we have that have thousands of questions, and you used to fill it out by hand, or your accountant would fill it out by hand, and they made it digital.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And it made sense. And for 20 or 30 years, it was like the best we could do. But now things should be intelligent. And what intelligent means is that the app should learn about me. And as I talk to the app and I start conversing with it and say, I'm a small business and I'm an Uber driver, I should get a different experience than someone who's a homeowner with 2 kids and has a W-2 job. And so we've got this really big system. We talked about the federal tax code. You also have over 40 states with tax codes. It's really big. And it's overwhelming, and people are intimidated by it. And so what we're seeking to do is build something that's more tailored, not just because it saves time, but also because it gives you as a taxpayer confidence. It lets you understand what is directly related to your situation and what am I supposed to take out of this.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges that April faces today?
The tax code is really complex. And when we look at this, there's a reason that we haven't seen new providers in market in 3 decades.
Yeah.
And the tax code has grown exponentially. You have to do integrations with the federal government and the states. You have to be perfect. So it's not like you can release a normal consumer app where you can kind of be good enough, right? You've got to get people's taxes right. They're either sort of right or they're wrong. And it just creates a really high barrier to entry. And so when we looked at this, we said our mission was to be a national tax company within 2 years. And so we feel like we're well on that way where we are right now. And the goal is to become a national tax company, but it's really challenging. Yeah. And I think when you look at we're big proponents here of we believe in democracy. So we believe that the voters should decide what Congress should do, and Congress should tell Treasury and IRS what to do. But I think when you look at the size and scale of the tax code, it does create an opportunity for our business. But as an American, you can also understand why there's real reason to simplify some of what goes on there. So it's easier, but also so that it's more, we can get more solutions to market faster.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. And if everything goes well, what's the long-term vision for April? I know you said national, widely used company, but is it anything beyond that, or what kind of do you see as the end goal?
There's a variety of different outcomes that we could have. We could expand horizontally and also build applications for tax professionals. We see a really big opportunity there. We also see an opportunity to build other products for consumers that are extensions or related to tax. So we're also launching soon products that relate more to what I mentioned, which are estimation products and optimization products. So you could think of many different kinds of tax optimizations. So the one we discussed was all around the paycheck, but you could think about something that's geared for investors around tax loss harvesting.
Yeah.
You could think about one that's geared towards small business around making estimated taxes, and the list can go on. We've got like a list of like over 12 apps that you can build. And then you've got an ecosystem of apps that people can use during the year. And then one sort of single app that you can ultimately use to file and be compliant with IRS.
Yeah. Amazing. And so excited to see what that is going to allow in terms of individuals who maybe haven't been as I guess, proactive with certain tax laws or certain benefits that they can accrue over time. And that would be an exciting shift for me as a user / as a fan of what you're working on, which is that proactivity and that ability to kind of take that agency back. I love this next section. I call it my founder FAQ. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions and we'll see what we get. First question I would love to ask is, what's particularly hard about your job?
Yeah, being the CEO of an early stage FinTech company, your job is changing all the time. And we're in a market where there's a lot of externalities. The venture market is changing. The overall economy is changing. You have high inflation, and that's also putting pressure on our clients, the banks, investment companies, and all of their customer base. And so in time where people are under pressure, it creates opportunity, but it also sort of the heat is on, as they say. And so you've got to be very responsive and you've got to be very adaptive.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite tax code or tax break that people say underutilize that you could share with us on the show?
I don't necessarily have one of those. Our tax team probably would. I think one that we had flagged when we were thinking about building the company, which I actually haven't seen yet because we haven't tackled Hawaii yet.
Yeah.
It's supposedly in Hawaii, there is supposedly some kind of credit or deduction if you care for a certain type of tree on your property.
Really?
And I think that gives you, but I think it gives you a sense of like, when you look at the tax law, it's meant to deal with very specific circumstances. And so the base of people that may be in a state where there's a lot of farming, or there's a lot of drilling, or there's a lot of financial sector is going to look like totally different. So you end up with also the values. I saw not necessarily tax related, but I think Montana, or there was another state that was working on sort of not allowing foreign purchase of certain land, which would be really hard to do in some states. And so I think you see that the way that California does something different than Missouri does something different than New York is really interesting. And I think in this country, we should just celebrate that more. Like, it's fine. We're a diverse country. We have lots of people and lots of different ways to do things. And I think that the fact that our tax code accounts for it and that we have a state that wants to incentivize tree care is also great.
Yeah. It's incredible to think about how it could kind of, it almost supports others to take care of or work or kind of work in a collaboration with the government to take care of things like wildlife or preserve certain parts of the country or even, like you said, get paid back for areas that are maybe subject to a little bit more from whether it's large companies or it's cool to see how it could collaborate and actually benefit both in a lot of ways. And kind of shifting gears here to the next question is thinking about technology and how the impact of going digital and thinking about how founders are able to build and scale products at a much higher, much more rapid rate than before. What was the challenge that you saw as a founder building technology and building something that is so complex, and has to continue to stay up to date with tax laws as the years go on? What are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen in building technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think the opportunity is that it's amazing how the stack gets built up. So I started building my first company when I was at NYU 13 years ago, and the cloud was still relatively new, and it was like a novelty. People were like, yeah, you don't have to go buy servers anymore. Like, the cost to start a company has gone down, and you can spin this thing up and you don't have to manage it all. And now, like, if you see how far we've come, like, you've got payroll used to be hard, and then you've got Gusto and JustWorks and these guys. So the amount of things that are out there that you can leverage to automate, to offload, so that you can really focus on the core, I think is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so it just makes the ability to actually focus on innovation and focus on the places where you can actually build something that's truly different and it's going to move the market rather than dealing with things that you can offload is moved tremendously. When we look at our business, we've applied, maybe I don't know if you saw that ChatGPT 4 came out and they were looking at tax or just GPT-4 rather, they were looking at tax as like a major focal point. And for us, we've been leveraging AI and LLM since the beginning. It was part of our core tech stack. And we're using human assisted AI in order to meet our objective of being national within 2 years. And the level, and that's like something no one ever necessarily would have connected. And when we told people we were doing them, they're like,
what are you, for now?
What are you talking about now? Everyone's like, oh, this is totally obvious. And we're like, we've been at this. I think the tough part in the market, which is just market cycles, is that you want to be in a market where things start from trust. And I think when you look at where tech is overall, we work really hard to be a trusted brand, to be a trusted partner to our clients. We're financially audited. We do a cybersecurity audit. We've gone through great lengths, but I think there's like overall a little bit of technology skepticism in the market just because of how fast we move. The innovation cycles couldn't keep up with the capital deployment. And I think there'll be a little bit of recovery of getting back to real innovation and real tech and products and letting those speak for themselves and letting some of this noise dissipate. And so I think like the fallout from the boom and bust is tough, but I'm at least optimistic that with a little bit less noise, the real products and platforms will shine through and have an opportunity to speak for themselves.
Yeah. Well said. And I 100% agree with that point. And especially on the show, being able to talk to so many founders and companies and everybody's who's still growing and is successfully building, or whether it's new product or innovating or building new customer bases, they operate at such an efficient way and at such a really impressive level in terms of understanding that themselves as their LTV, their profits and losses, and really understanding the core functions of their business and how it operates to then make strategic and intelligent moves to scale and build teams. And I'm with you. I'm really excited to see a lot of these companies come out, and I think it'll be impressive at the maturity at which they will be present at such a earlier stage than before, which gets me pretty pumped. I always love to ask this next question because I love how founders extract knowledge out of anything they ingest, whether it was early in your career or now. What are some books or people that influence you the most?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be influenced by a great group of people. And I think in a large part, well, you could say whether it was by good fortune or whether my decision-making had something to do with it. But when I'd started my first company, when I was 19 at NYU, I had taken a course with a gentleman named Larry Lenihan, and Larry was one of the founders of First More Capital, pretty well known, fun. And the title of the class was Ready, Fire, Aim. And the whole concept was, so the concept of the class was you put an idea together in a team, and then if the winner will get a salary, which was an astonishing $12,500, but we won. Oof. And that was cool. But I think it was sort of that permission to try something. And that was like novel. 15 years ago, you had to go get your law degree. Your parents expected you to go get that law degree and go work in a sort of job in a place they understood. And this concept of like, no, you don't need to write a 30-page business plan and have it signed off from some very senior executive. It's the digital era. Come up with an idea, write some code, ship it to market, get feedback cycles. And I think that sort of that permission of like what really mattered at the end of the day so early before my career had even really started was like liberating, formative. And then in the it was really quite liberating, especially for someone like me that like couldn't really understand what they should be doing in life. I was raised by two lawyers, and I'm like, this is intellectually interesting, but I don't think it's for me. And I think most of my peers at NYU were going to work on Wall Street, and I'm like, this is way too buttoned up. Probably not for me either. But I like the motifs of finance. Sure. So I ended up finding this thing called FinTech entrepreneurship, which then became a thing. And I'll give you one other example of someone that I got to work with over the last 5 years was another gentleman named Nadav, who used to run the sort of NSA equivalent in Israel. Yeah. Oh, wow. Had a lot of interesting stories and had seen a lot of interesting things, had dealt with crises and at a national scale when it was really life and death. And so he had left the army and the military after many decades career and was building cybersecurity companies. And getting to spend 4 or 5 years with him long flights and nights going to client visits and seeing he would work a lot with chief information security officers that were also going through the throes of it, security incidents, demanding boards, unknown risks, and just seeing the way that he would advise them, be a counterpart to them, and deal with uncertainty. Like, I think we're generally living in uncertain times, and just sort of how do you embrace uncertainty and deal with it and be able to move forward confidently, but also understand risk and understand sort of where you can fail but recover and what's an existential failure. Super valuable at an early stage entrepreneurial career. And that's the life of an entrepreneur. It's and I talk with other entrepreneurs. That's one of the commonalities we all have. Life is just uncertain. It could happen. And this last week was like a great example of that, is anything can kind of happen at any minute. And you have to still have your teams and carry out your jobs and also manage that long tail uncertainty at the same time.
Yeah. Well said, man. Well said. I know we're coming to the close of the show, and I want to give you a chance to let us know where we can find April and support you as a founder. But last question is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have or that you would have liked to answer?
That caught me kind of by surprise. I thought the questions were creative and covered a really wide range on personal background. And I think what maybe is like important, just like also when we look at like the economic situation, is there, when we talk about internally also, like to other founders, like the most important thing is just to remain calm and create a plan. And so that's what we're sort of focused on here, is being attentive to our clients and focusing on what we can control, which is, I think, is just a great advice and any founder can practice.
Yeah. Ben, I know we're coming to the end of the show, and it's been amazing learning from your experience and not only about ways that companies and individuals can utilize tax code, but also ways they can be proactive, which I'm, like I said, time and time again, particularly excited about, and that ability to really give people the freedom and agency to make plans and plan long term. But last little bit is, where can we find you? Let us know your websites are, your LinkedIn's, your Twitters, your Instagrams. Give us your plugs. Where can we be a supporter of you as a founder and start playing with the technology?
Yeah, if you're a business that wants to integrate April, you can find us on getapril.com and reach out, and we're ready and open for business to support all kinds of financial partners that want to integrate tax features and products into their offering.
Amazing. Well, Ben, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. I really hope you enjoyed yourself, and thank you again for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.